President. I would like to thank members for the questions, comments and recommendations made. At this point, I would like to give the floor to my colleague from the Department of Orang Asli Development to provide clarification on the issues raised.
To thank member states for the comment and recommendation made to the right of the indigenous people. In Malaysia, the Department of Orang Asli Development, JAQA, is given the responsibility to protect the welfare and manage the development for the Orang Asli in Peninsular Malaysia. Aboriginal People Act 1954, Act 134, specifically mentioned in Section 4 that the Director General for Orang Asli Development is responsible for general administration, welfare and advancement of the Orang Asli. The government is committed to ensure that there will not be any group sidelined or left out. The administration of the indigenous people affairs in Sabah and Sarawak, on the other hand, somewhat differ from that of the Orang Asli in Peninsular Malaysia, in that the former collectively formed that majority of the population and in general are in the mainstream society. They are already involved in the state decision-making process through representation in the various political parties forming the state government. At the same time, efforts are also being undertaken by the state and federal government to further promote and protect the right of the indigenous people in Sarawak and Sabah. On the question raised by Sweden, I wish to clarify that the right of Orang Asli to land, belief, culture and non-discrimination has been clearly stated under the Federal Constitution and the Aboriginal People Act 1954, Act 134. Furthermore, Article 8 in bracket 1 of the Federal Constitution stated that all persons are equal before the law and entitled to equal protection of the law. This means Orang Asli have the same protection as other citizens of Malaysia, including their right to speak an Aboriginal language and habitually follow an Aboriginal way of life, custom and belief. The Government of Malaysia is also committed in protecting the land right of Orang Asli. JAQA will continue to cooperate with state governments and relevant agencies to discuss and resolve issues concerning land. Furthermore, the government has also set up a task force to review and formulate the necessary strategy regarding the issue of indigenous people land right based on the national inquiry into the land right of indigenous people in Malaysia that was issued in April 2013. The government is also currently holding various consultations and with the state authorities, other relevant agencies and indigenous groups regarding indigenous people land issues. Until December 2012, a total of 20,802.15 hectares of Orang Asli land have been gazetted, while an additional 20,597.6 hectares have been approved by the state government. As for the question raised by Norway, I believe that the issue has been addressed in paragraph 72 of our national report. Madam Vice President, currently Economic Planning Unit under the Prime Minister Department, UNDP and UNICEF are collaborating on conducting a study and review of the socio-economic status of Orang Asli in Peninsular Malaysia for the formulation of a national development plan for the Orang Asli. This collaboration is aimed at assessing the success of the poverty eradication and welfare program for the Orang Asli undertaken during the 9th Malaysia Plan, with a view of formulate strategies and programs to be included in the National Development Plan for the Orang Asli. We recognize the challenges facing the indigenous communities in our pursuit of development and raising their standard of living. Balancing the need for development and protection of the indigenous rights requires a comprehensive and holistic approach by all relevant stakeholders. Such approach will continue to include indigenous people in the relevant decision-making processes at both the national and sub-national level. Thank you.
From the Sarawak State Government to provide clarification on the issues raised.
I wish to respond to the issue raised by Norway, Switzerland, Denmark and Finland on the indigenous people's land rights, particularly in Sarawak. Sarawak has an indigenous population comprising 27 ethnic groups living in harmony. Respect for their human rights, cultural identities, custom and tradition forms a foundation for peace and stability which enables the government to implement a comprehensive economic development agenda via the Sarawak Corridor of Renewable Energy, or SCORE. This sustainable development strategy encompasses the use of water and other natural resources to provide all the people of Sarawak, including its indigenous population, improved life opportunity, infrastructure, and public services. For almost 2 centuries, the laws of Sarawak has recognized and protected indigenous people's rights over land, created by recognized customs and practices. Based on well-documented official records, Sarawak has approximately 1.5 million hectares of native customary rights land. Under the Government Transformation Program, on the new Native Customary Rights Initiative started in 2010, 344,000 hectares of NCR land has been surveyed. This program envisages that at least half of all NCR land would be surveyed by 2015 and will continue until the extent and boundaries of all NCR land have been demarcated. Consequently, conflicting claims over such land can be avoided and the security of tenure thereof will be guaranteed. The SCORE development agenda includes the building of hydropower facilities, and this unavoidably entails the use of NCR land. The state government and Sarawak Energy Berhad, or SEB, which is state-owned, spearheading the hydropower development in the state, have voluntarily incorporated into the development model the Hydropower Sustainability Assessment Protocol of the International Hydropower Association, formed under the UN Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization to promote best international practices in the hydropower industry. The IHA protocol includes, among others, early-stage project evaluation of environmental and social impacts on project-affected communities and livelihoods, resettlement programs, and indigenous peoples concerned. Our procedures for engagements and consultation with affected indigenous communities conform with acceptable norms and standards, including the principles captured in the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and the International Labour Organization's Indigenous and Tribal Peoples Convention. In all cases where indigenous people's land is required, the state government will restore and improve the livelihood of directly affected communities by contributing to the economic development, education, and poverty reduction. The focus on improving standards of living through resettlement aligns with the IHA protocol and, in our view, has exceeded relevant international standards. As for the Murun hydroelectric project, initial consultations commenced in 1994 without coercion. Formal engagement with the affected indigenous communities began in 2008. By 2010, all 7 of the directly affected communities have chosen their respective resettlement locations, and by late 2011, they have chosen the sites for and were actively involved in the design for their new longhouses. Implementation of the Murun Resettlement Action Plan, disclosed in May this year, and the compensation package for affected Punant and Kenya communities is a manifestation of the state policy's commitment to fair compensation. The state has provided these communities with a comprehensive compensation package, including 19,500 hectares within the nearby Danun and Linau protected forests for them to access for food, wildlife, and forest produce. This arrangement represents an immediate and substantial improvement in the standard of living of the affected communities in Murun, compared to their previous situation where they live in a remote area with limited access to state-supported health, welfare, and social services. Further, they have gained better access to basic human rights to education, health care, and better social amenities and economic and employment opportunities while preserving their cultural identities and traditions. It is the firm intention and commitment of the state government and Straw Energy Berhad to use this model with improvement where necessary for the future development projects such as the Baram hydroelectric project, for which engagements and consultations are already well under the way. For further details of the consultation process and compensation package, there is circulated a document in this room for better appreciation of the efforts of the state government to promote and protect the rights of the indigenous people in Sarawak. Thank you.
To give to my colleague from the Ministry of Women, Family and Community Development to respond to issues raised.
Mr. President, women constitute 48.6% of the 29.7 million population in Malaysia. As such, the government of Malaysia recognizes women as an important human capital for the country. As an affirmative action, the 10th Malaysia Plan 2011 to 2015 specifically outlines the following key areas: increasing women's participation in the labor force, increasing the number of women in key decision-making positions, improving provision of support for women in challenging circumstances such as widows, single mothers and those with lower incomes, and eliminating all forms of discrimination against women. Mr. President, on the question raised with regard to the action taken by Malaysia to increase women participation in the labor force, I would like to clarify that the measures that have been undertaken includes: first, the provision of incentives to encourage the establishment of childcare centers at the workplace as well as in the community to provide affordable and quality childcare. Second, the extension of fully paid maternity leave in the public sector from 60 days up to 90 days for female civil servants. For the private sector, local banks have taken the initiative to provide fully paid maternity leave from 60 days to 90 days, effective from August 2010, with the signing of a collective agreement. Third, beginning 2013, double tax deduction incentive is given to companies that retrain and employ women who want to be gainfully employed after a career break. And fourth, the enactment of the Employment Part-Time Employees Regulation 2010, which came into force on 1st October 2010 to regulate flexible working arrangement. These developments aim at attracting the latent workforce, particularly housewives. As a result of the concerted efforts, female labor force participation rate has increased from 46.5% in 2010 to 47.9% in 2011 and 49.5% in 2012. Malaysia aims to increase the female labor force participation rate to 55% by the end of 2015. On the question regarding women representation in the decision-making positions, I am pleased to inform that there have been significant increase in the number of women holding decision-making positions in the civil service from 18.8% in 2004 to 31.7% in 2012. It is also worth mentioning that currently 7 out of 24 ministries are headed by women secretaries general. This is indeed a record in the public service. Due to the success of the policy in the public sector, Malaysia introduced the policy of at least 30% women in decision-making positions in the corporate sector in June 2011. To ensure the success of this policy, the Women Directors Program was introduced. In addition, the Women Directors Registry was established as a database of qualified, capable and experienced women who are ready for board positions. Mr. President, microenterprise is another aspect that is given due prominence towards empowering women economically. In this regard, the microcredit scheme microcredit schemes are extended to low-income individuals in rural as well as urban areas to engage in economic generating activities. Next, Mr. President, Malaysia will continue to ensure the well-being of children as well as to provide conducive environment for the protection of children. In this regard, the Child Act 2001 has been reviewed in line with the current needs. The amendments have been forwarded to the Attorney General's chambers for consideration. In addition, Malaysia has initiated efforts to study juvenile restorative justice models to handle cases of children that are in conflict with the law. Another aspect on children that is currently addressed in Malaysia is protecting them from cyber threats. In this regard, Malaysia has initiated discussions with relevant stakeholders to formulate the Child Online Protection Plan of Action. Mr. President, Malaysia continues to address the rights of persons with disabilities, PWDs, particularly in matters related to the support, care, protection and rehabilitation. With regard to the PWD Act 2007, which is non-punitive act, Malaysia would like to highlight that issues of non-compliance to this act are addressed in other relevant legislation, mainly the Penal Code, Criminal Procedure Code, and Uniform Building Bylaws. In November 2012, Malaysia, together with other countries in the Asia-Pacific region, adopted the Asia and Pacific Decade of PWDs 2013-2022 and the Incheon strategy to make the right rail for PWDs. Following this, Malaysia is currently working to update the existing policy and plan of action for PWDs, which was formulated in 2007. With regard to the existing reservation to CEDAW, CRC and CRPD, a technical working committee chaired by the Ministry of Women, Family and Community Development will be activated again. This committee will look into the related optional protocols that have not been ratified by Malaysia. Thank you, Mr. President.
Madam Vice President, to conclude, highly appreciates the opportunity to engage in this constructive dialogue with the international community. I wish to express my sincere gratitude to all delegations for their questions, recommendations, observations, including the constructive comments and the sharing of experiences in improving the human rights situation in their own countries. Malaysia has taken this review exercise very seriously and with an open mind. We are convinced that this process, conducted as it was in the spirit of collegiality and goodwill, has laid a good foundation for the further enhancement and protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms internationally. Malaysia has participated in this process with the aim of sharing its experiences, approaches, and certain fundamental viewpoints relating to the promotion and protection of human rights. I wish to reiterate that while Malaysia has come a long way, we acknowledge that there are certain areas which require more attention and action. I wish to assure all delegations that the various comments, suggestions and recommendations made during the interactive dialogue have been duly noted and will be given full consideration by the government. My delegation is also aware that due to time constraint, some of the questions raised during the interactive dialogue remain unanswered. On this matter, I wish to assure you that Malaysia will take into account and carefully examine all the questions, issues, concerns and recommendations raised. Madam Vice President, allow me to reassure you and all delegations that Malaysia is fully committed to the UPR and its follow-up. We are mindful of the ultimate goal of the UPR and as such, we acknowledge the shortcomings and challenges that we face. Before concluding, I wish to also recognize and pledge my delegation's fullest cooperation to the delegations of Japan, Kenya and Switzerland, which have been appointed as a troika to facilitate Malaysia's review. Allow me once again, on behalf of my delegation, to thank you, Madam Vice President, for ably leading this meeting and to thank all delegations who have contributed to Malaysia's review today. I thank you, Madam Vice President.